Hi guys, Matt from Motors here. So today I'm going to be showing you how you can go out and buy a car for cheap, fix it up for a small amount of money, double or treble the car's value, and then either keep and drive the car yourself or sell it on for a profit. When I'm buying a used car, there are three major things I look out for. If it has any of these issues, I walk away and move on to the next car on my list. They are: number 1, major mechanical issues, such as a noise coming from the engine while running, or a gearbox unable to change or select gears. Number 2, major rust on the frame or chassis of the car, especially with holes through structural areas. And number 3, signs of significant accident damage like a bent frame or bad previous repair. Okay, so a tip for getting a car cheap is to get up early on weekends, especially on Saturday or Sunday mornings, as people like to list their cars for sale on days they're off work. Normally I pick out a few different makes or models that I'm familiar with and search by the latest posts or date entered. Okay, so I've chosen the car to go and look at that's not too far from where I live, which is better because if it isn't what I want to buy, I've only driven a few miles to look at it. I've learned this the hard way in years gone by, that people don't always describe their cars for sale accurately, so if you can stay within a distance of your city or town, it's best rather than driving a couple of hours to be let down by the seller's opinion of their car. So the owner was happy to give me the keys to inspect the car, which is great because you'll always be able to have a better poke around. So I checked around online before I left, and these 2-litre Audis have a problem with the oil pump that fails. So I asked the owner and they informed me that it was upgraded. Sometimes a quick Google search before buying a car can give a great insight into an issue a certain make or model might suffer from. The first thing I noticed was the rear wheel had a lot of baked on brake dust on it, which is usually a sign of caliper or pad wear, but the rest of the walk around of the car was quite good. I checked all the vital items like oil, coolant and brake fluid, which were all okay. Then I noticed something I like to see, which shows that the owner's mechanic was keeping a record of maintenance. A simple bit of information like this shows that a car had regular oil changes, which gives a little reassurance at least. The owner was okay with me going for a test drive on my own. I suppose it's hard to get 2 meters away in a car. Good for me though, as I can stop somewhere and have a good inspection of the car, so I can check under the car while running and make sure that there's no obvious leaks. The only issue I could find was the rear wheel was either a seized caliper or a brake pad right down to the metal. The owner was asking €800 for the car, which was a reasonable price, and I checked online to see what these cars are making for a clean car with no issues. The price they are trading hands at is between €1,500 and €3,000. So if I can fix this car up and sell it for, say, middle of that, which is 2,200, that will give a nice profit of at least 1,500, depending on how much we need to spend on repairs of course. After a quick check with my cheap scanner revealed no other issues besides brake pads, I now know there's a profit margin on this car, but I still need to get the best price possible in case any unforeseen costs pop up, and it's just what you should always do: ask for the best cash price before you make an offer. Another good tip is to use the items we know are issues, like the brakes and the fact that the bodywork has scratches, to lower the price. So we agreed on $600 for the car. I was happy with the price and they were happy to be getting rid of their car, which had a few issues. So the brakes got a lot worse on the drive home, so I decided to stop at the car parts store and pick up a set of rear brake pads. The last thing I want is a car stuck on my driveway and be unable to drive it. So as soon as I got home, I removed both wheels. With brakes there's a couple of things that can go wrong. The easy fix would be a worn set of brake pads. After that it could be something more expensive, like brake calipers, which can be $200 per caliper. And it was obvious straight away that it was just the brake pads were right down to the bare metal. So maybe the mechanic who was doing the service work on this car was not so good if he didn't even spot a set of rear brake pads needing replacing. And maybe he was only writing on the engine cover, letting the customer think that he was doing a good job. So with everything reassembled and the brakes working as they should, I was anxious to put the wheels back on the car and drive it to make sure that all was okay. So the car drove perfect on the test drive, so it was a very cheap fix. Before we get into fixing the bodywork issues and the look of the car, let's look at the spend so far. We spent $600 on the car, which was a great price, and now we spent just $24 on fitting brake pads. The first thing that people notice when they're going to look at a car for sale is the bodywork, and if it's got deep scratches or scuffs on bumpers, it really looks like the car wasn't maintained properly, the previous owner was a bad driver. So I need to really improve the look of the car. A lot of people would probably try and touch in these scratches, but I really want the car to look its best. So I'm going to repaint this deep scratch on the fender and also repaint the scuff on the bumper. That way the presentation of the car will look a lot better when I go to sell it. So a top tip is to try and give the customer the best possible car they can get for the most reasonable price. So if you guys are thinking about starting to buy and sell cars, or just interested in car repair and paintwork you can do at home, even with rattle cans, I have a full series on how-to videos for the average DIYer, which I'll put the links in the description below, so you can tackle nasty bodywork damage and scratches like this one at home yourself. The main reason bodywork repairs are so expensive is because body shops use very expensive equipment like spray boots and special dust extraction to give the paint a flawless finish. The actual equipment you need to paint a car and do a quality job is quite cheap. You can buy a spray gun for 20-30 euro and a compressor for 60 to 80 euro. Then you will just need a respirator. The resultant finish when painting a car is down to the preparation you put in when doing the repair. It is important to sand out all the damage, and sometimes you will need to apply body filler to give the area a smooth finish again. But if you have patience and time, it's definitely something that you can tackle yourself on a car flip. To get these scratches repaired at a shop would probably cost 400 or 500 euro, but doing this myself, the paint only cost around 50 euro. So I know a lot of you guys would have thought I could have touched in this scratch, but this shows actually how deep the scratch was, that it was right down to the bare metal. So the right thing to do was to sand it down and paint the entire fender. So with all the areas sanded down, it was time to apply the body filler. It only needed a small amount on the front corner of this bumper, which seems to be a very common area to get damaged on these A4s. So if you're going to buy one, you can guarantee that this piece that sticks out will have been scuffed off a curb and will need to be painted. So with all the body filler sanded down nice and smooth, it was time to apply the primer. The primer I used was an aerosol high build primer, which is great for giving a nice layer of paint to then sand down to give a super smooth finish. Now we're on to the masking, which if you ask me is almost as important as the painting. If you get overspray in your car, it'll destroy the rest of your car and it's almost impossible to remove. So I went out and bought a full roll of masking paper when I was buying my paint supplies. So if we check our costs, we have spent another 10 on primer, 16 on base coat, 30 on clear coat and 18 on masking paper. That gives a total of another 64. I'm not painting this in a spray boot, so there's a lot of dust in my garage, and to compensate for that I like to spend a good 10 minutes cleaning down the paint area using a tack cloth. This will help get a nice finish. If you have a Volkswagen or Audi, your paint coat will look something like this, but it's different on all other makes. But if you're getting paint for your car, do not guess the colour. Make sure you get the right paint for your car. This paint is a two-stage paint, which means that you apply the colour first, called the base coat, and then apply the clear coat on top. This protects the colour and gives it the shine. When mixing the base coat, you just need to add paint thinner at a 1:1 ratio. With the clear coat, you will add thinners and hardener to the paint at a ratio of 2 parts clear coat to 1 part hardener. I applied 3 light coats of the black base coat, and I did a blend on the base coat about here on the panel, so the colour will be a perfect match. The clear coat was next, so another complete wipe down with a tack rag, as even the smallest piece of dirt will show on the clear coat. Then I mixed up the clear coat in 2:1 ratio, and this time I will bring the paint right to the edge of the panel, about here, where the fender meets the door. I want to wet sand above this clear coat so it will have a nice glossy finish, and it will allow me to sand and polish out any little bits of dirt that are in the clear coat. So in order to give myself enough clear coat to sand away, I put on 2 heavy coats. My top tip for laying down super smooth clear coat is to do it in layers rather than trying to get the perfect finish on the first coat. But I will advise you there's a very fine balance between getting the perfect shine and creating runs in the clear coat. Areas like on the edge of panels are very easy to get a run in the paint, so you will need to be careful not to go too thick with the paint on these spots. So after 2 coats I was really happy with how this turned out, with only a tiny bit of dirt in the clear coat here and there. So the next day I went on the look for a set of wheels for the car, to make the car more visually appealing and make the picture stand out when I put the car up for sale. I managed to pick up a set for €100 with good tyres, although they have a lot of curb damage and scratches. I started to sand down the wheels when I got back home to get them ready for primer, and then a fresh coat of silver and then clear coat. If you guys are looking for help on how to restore wheels, I have a few videos showing how to repair curb marks and damage similar to these wheels on my channel. So if we go and check our costs again, we are still on budget, and these wheels were a bargain at €100. So we are still on target to make a good profit on this car. I plan on painting these wheels in a metallic silver, so I give the wheels a lot of attention to get them scratch and damage free before I start to paint the primer. As you've probably noticed, these had Volkswagen caps, and I'm putting them on an Audi, so I ordered 4 Audi centres online. So after I wet sanded the primer on all 4 wheels, I taped them up and started to spray out the silver. I usually use a very bright silver that I've used before, but the majority of silvers are the same, so you can't go wrong if you're doing your own wheels. In this case, the exact shade I used was LA7W. After 2 heavy coats of clear coat, these wheels look new again, and they only cost €100, which when they are fitted to the car should add €500 value to the car. The one thing that really worried me on the exterior of this car was the paintwork, as it was so freaking dull. There seemed to be no shine at all from the clear coat, so I wanted to do a test on an area to see if the clear coat would come up, to see if it was going to be worth my while to do a full paint correction on the entire car. I chose the area where I thought the clear was at its dullest, and used a good quality cutting compound called G3, and gave the area 2 passes with my trusty buffer, and to my absolute surprise the clear coat started to come up really nice, and gave me the confidence that it was worth doing the whole car. Before I started that, I had the laborious task of removing tar from the paintwork. In fact, the tar on this car was probably the worst I'd seen, and even though it would be more obvious on a lighter colour car like white and silver, I still wanted to remove it all using tar and glue remover before I started to polish, as it was everywhere on the bottom half of the car. The tar and glue remover made light work of this, and I only spent the next half an hour removing all the tar from both sides of the car. The first panel I wanted to buff was the area that I had painted, as there was some slight orange peel and a few specks of dust in it. The clear coat had cured for 2 days, so it was the right time to sand it down. I used 2000 grit sandpaper without a sanding block because of the curve on the fender. You really need to be careful when cutting down the clear coat to remove the orange peel, as you can very easily sand through the clear. The shine on the clear coat had slightly died back, so after this process it'll have a glass finish, which is what you want, especially as I'm going to be selling the car and I want it looking its absolute best. After I was done flattening down the clear coat, 99% of the dust and orange peel were removed, so I took the time to buff the panel, making sure not to leave any cloudy spots in the finish. A big mistake people make is not to stop and wipe down the area each time to check that the shine is nice and glossy. With that deep nasty scratch now completely gone, it gives the Bodywork a great chance of passing an inspection from someone coming to look at the car. As I said earlier, the paint is the first thing people notice when they come to buy a car. I spent that entire evening giving this Audi back its shine, which in total took me about 3 hours to do the whole car, but it definitely polished value into the car, as the old saying says. It can be really difficult to pick it up on camera, so I took a few before and after shots just to give you an idea of the difference it made. So here's the quarter panel before, and then this is after buffed. And then onto the front fender, this is before it was buffed, and then this is the after. And then onto the wing mirror, this is the before it was buffed, and then this is the after. With the bodywork starting to come up nicely, it's time to get rid of these ugly rims and swap them out for the set I bought and then painted. There was one more thing I had to do before I put on the wheels. As these wheels had a lot of space in between the spokes, I wanted to paint the brake calipers just to give it that extra pop when I fit the wheels. I decided to paint the calipers red. It was just the red I had lying around. I think it's a Honda colour, but I'm not sure what shade. It's a 2K paint, so it should be very hard wearing, and I sanded down all the calipers and cleaned them with some degreaser, then masked up the brake disc. These little details might seem like a waste of time, but people really love the little details sometimes. I used my €15 minigun to paint these, and the size made it really easy to get around the back of the caliper. Let me know in the comments if you guys think red was the right choice for the calipers, or maybe I should have used silver, or maybe no paint at all. I'm interested to know what you think. So the only thing I was waiting on to get the wheels on the car was the Audi centre caps, and when they arrived the next morning from Amazon, I was anxious to get the wheels on the car. So finally the moment I'd been waiting for was to see would these wheels make a big change to the car's look, and hopefully add some street appeal to the car and get some eyes on the ad when I post it up for sale. The wheels in my opinion transformed the look of the car, and we now went from an ugly dull set of wheels to some nice shiny 5-spokes with low profile tyres, and the red calipers really set the wheels off. I went ahead and removed all the other wheels and did the same process with the calipers in red and fitted the new wheels, and now we are getting very close to putting this car for sale and making some profit. Now it's down to the very last job on the list, and the one I hate the most, the interior clean, and it was quite bad in this car, not the worst I'd seen or anything, but definitely very dirty. You could tell the previous owner hadn't cleaned his car in a very long time, but luckily there was no ripped leather or bad carpet stains, so it's just a matter of rolling up your sleeves and getting stuck in and giving this thing a deep clean. I started off vacuuming up the heavy dirt first with the bristle head on the vacuum and using a scrubbing brush to remove the stubborn bits of trash that were embedded in the carpet. Luckily there was floor mats in this car which saved the carpets from getting really badly stained. The seats on the rear had mostly dirt from kids, and some animals definitely had been in here before, so I was vacuuming up a lot of dog hair, but with them being half leather they were easily cleaned up. I like to use a seat cleaning foam to remove any stains because it saves getting the seats really wet, so they won't need long to dry. Besides covering my camera in interior foam, I sprayed down the door paddings on each door, first using a scrubbing brush and then going back over them with a good upholstery cleaner. If you guys are wondering about any of the tools or products I used in this video, I will leave links below so you can look them up. So with the interior finally cleaned up and looking a lot nicer, it was time to start thinking of a price we were going to list this car for. From doing our research, we know that these cars go for between $1,500 and $3,000 for one in great condition with no problems. I think this one is now in perfect condition and has no problems, but also I don't want to be sitting on this for a long time, so I always like to aim to price it right in the middle range. Let's check our final total to see what we spent on the car and what we need to price the car at to make a profit considering the time we have invested. As we already know, we spent $600 on the car, $24 on brake pads, $64 on paint supplies, and $100 on wheels and tyres, and then for miscellaneous pieces like centre caps and fuel etc. I'm putting down $60, which brings a total of $848, but let's round it up to $850. The aim was to come out with at least $1,000 profit on this car, which for holding a car for only a week would be a great return. I always like to try and list my cars for sale on a Friday, that way I know people are at home and will be scrolling through Facebook and other classifieds. I took some good shots of the car that evening and listed it on both Facebook Marketplace and my local classifieds. The price I put on the car was $2,495 or nearest offer. The first day I didn't get anyone serious on the car, so I decided to drop the price by $100, as I know people seeing the ad for the second time would realise the price was dropped and show them I was serious to sell. So after a few messages back and forth with a potential buyer, I gave them my number. They had already offered me $2,000 for the car, so I knew they were serious and looking to buy. My top tip is never to give a final price over the phone, as when the person arrives, they will always want to lower the price even further. So the people arrived to view the car, they test drove it, and after the test drive this time they offered me $2,200 and I was asking $2,300, so I said we could split the difference and do it for $2,250, and we shook on that and everyone was happy. So that gave a brilliant profit of €1,400 for just a couple of days of work. So I'm sure if you do some research on your local car market in your town, you will find cars that have a great profit margin. All you have to do is make sure you buy at the right price and don't be afraid to haggle. Okay guys, that's it for me. I hope you enjoyed watching me fix up this car and move it on. Thanks for watching and see you soon.